Well, speaking of a roof over their head, can we move on to the next segment? Because both of these guys are lucky they have a roof over their head. If their original work in wrestling had been like this, they would be right now panhandling on the street. Uncle Don is back, and he introduces Chris Jericho. And of course, they go to the break in Jericho's entrance, so we don't have to hear everybody sing. But when they come back, they're in the ring, and this is the point where Don asks Chris to give his answer. Is he going to join the Phallus family? And they've been milking this for weeks, and Jericho was like, I don't know, I start factions, I don't join them, and everybody was thinking, well, what the fuck? And he's lost the Jericho Appreciation Society over this, and now he stands there and he gives his answer as he thinks about it. Yes, he will join Don's family. And Don is shocked. Wait, what? Yes? And then Jericho says he needs to align with somebody like him, a lowlife like him, right? And so Don is happy, and he tells Jericho, well, let's go celebrate. But Jericho says, well, wait a minute, because there's a portrait covered up in the corner of the ring. It's on the easel. It's a painting or a portrait or a picture of some kind. And Don tries to play it off like, well, it's just a small little gift, but we'll look at it later. And Jericho wants to see it. And finally, he whips the covering off, and it is a picture of Don holding Jericho's disembodied head out in his hands. And Jericho's like, well, what is this? And Don, it's a rib. It's a rib. Well, no, that the artist screwed up. Or what? And then Jericho said, you thought I was going to say no, and you were going to have me assassinated or beheaded. And so Jericho asked Don, for the first time in your life, you be honest. So now Jericho was going to join the group shortly ago, but now he tells Don he's always a liar. He's never been blah, blah, blah. So he really was going to join up with a guy was as low as he was. And then Don tells Jericho, well, fuck it. I thought you were going to say no because of your massive ego that's ruined your entire life and run off all your friends and blah. They just tell each other off now. And then Don slaps Chris, and Chris grabs Don, and here comes Take a Shit with Will Ostrich. They hit the ring, and they beat up Jericho, and they hit him with a chair, and they break the painting over his head, and Jericho gets color. And a pap smear, but it was color. And he's bleeding. And then here comes Sammy Guevara with a baseball bat, and all the heels bail out. So now I guess Jericho is officially, after he has become the most popular heel with the exception of MJF, in the company, and sapped off the appreciators' heat and the heat of all of the baby faces. Now he switched back babyface so he can do the same thing to the other side of the roster. Your thoughts on this performance, Brian?
The performance was really bad. Again, one of those classic Chris Jericho Monday Night Raw wannabe segments. But to get past the performance, it doesn't make any sense. Why is any of this happening? The portrait thing, the idea that it would have ended with Jericho joining him for a time is one thing. But this is the problem with Chris Jericho booking Chris Jericho. He doesn't know when to quit. And it became this whole thing. So Jericho's a moron, right? I mean, it's the only way you could take it based on this. Jericho's a fool. Don Callis was prepared for all of this. And now we get a match that no one wanted for Wembley Stadium. Like, no one was demanding any of this. And that's what you get. I'll give one positive here. And again, truly bad work from Callis and Jericho. I mean, they're just pleasing themselves with this crap. This was the first blood on the show. And I was like, oh, you know what? It was done really poorly. This whole thing is rushed and stupid. Jericho's really bad in this role, but at least they're trying to get it over as serious. He gets the thing smashed over his head. He's bleeding. But there will be more blood.
So now it's because Take a Shit is over doing the other match, I think. So it's going to be Ostrich against Jericho 1-on-1 at Wembley, correct?
Oh, is it? Or is it going to be Jericho and Sammy versus Takeshita and
well, you would have thought it would have been, but then later on when Jericho was in the back still with his pap smear not wiped off yet so that he could show that, he was mad at Ostrich, and I thought it was going to be a single match.
Yeah, I got to double check. I think that was what I originally read. And by the way, he was licking his own blood during that promo, which was really, it was just, what a weird night.
That's the best way to check to see if you're low on iron. So anyway, another attack, another angle, another match announced for what?
Ospreay jumps in there, and I don't think he's easily recognizable to everyone. I mean, some of the people in the front may recognize him if they watch every week and watch New Japan. But he got in there and he did this move. I've only seen it one other time, where Motown 25, the Jacksons reunite, the original Jackson 5.
Yes.
They're doing a medley of all their hits. And then after they're done with that, Michael goes, Randy! And Randy Jackson, who joined at the end, after Jermaine left, comes out there to no pop. But he makes this move, yeah. And Will Ospreay got in there and puffed out his chest, and I don't think anyone was really going crazy.
But here's the thing. When they're doing these 8 and 10 person fucking just jump in and nobody knows what's going on and all the work looks like shit, if a fan was to take their shirt off and roll in and start doing something, would anybody be able to tell? Would you really notice? Think about it.
We're midway through this show. Let me just stop you here real quick. Let's talk about the booking in AEW for a second.
What? How can we talk about something that doesn't exist?
There are people who still think Tony Khan's a good booker. There are people who will say, look at the crowd at Wembley. How could you say he's a bad booker? There are people who will say, I like this kind of stuff. There's lots of people trying to justify things. He hired Will Washington. Remember that guy
Will Wheaton.
Yeah, the guy said he'd been in wrestling media for 18 years. No one had heard of him until just recently, a very small group of people. But he was auditioning for Tony. He got a job. Has anything improved? All these other people got powered up. They were going to do things. Has anything improved? It gets worse and worse. It's a drama factory. There's no management. It's poorly run. No one has any actionable power beyond Tony Khan. Look at the state of this fucking show. And this is the bad show. The good show has nothing but drama coming out of that too because of Tony. Can you stop? Can we stop for 1 second and settle?
I wish we could stop for the rest of the day.
Settle a debate from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. Is it Haw with an H or Caw with a C? There are people who somehow think you have a C in it.
No, it's Haw. As in he, Haw.
H-A-W?
Yes.
There you go.
Everybody knows that. All righty. Anyway, so continuing on with whatever the fuck it is that we're watching here.